Hi, YouTubers. I'm going to tell the story about my 50-year friendship with a gentleman of the Japanese origin who was originally my enemy and later one of my best friends. During the war with Japan, we watched the Japanese. Well, they lost their Air Force Center, big Air Force Center at Hollandia in New Guinea, and we watched them then start to build a new center at the other end of New Guinea. There were several thousand of Japanese soldiers over there who were obviously put to work building new airstrips, and we watched them, and that had all been done on the Japanese side by someone that we were both in the war in the Pacific. We didn't know each other. We didn't have any inkling on who the other one was or anything about each other. And after the Japanese surrender at the end of World War II, I was sent over as part of occupation forces in the defeated Japan as an advisor to the Japanese concerning their rebuilding of a self-defense force. They had passed a constitution after giving the women the vote, incidentally. They passed and adopted a constitution that forbade Japan to ever rearm for aggressive campaign. Now, here I am in Japan at the national level, an advisor to the occupied Japanese government, and a final peace treaty is being negotiated by Allen Dulles, a brother of our Secretary of State, Dulles. And I was detailed or ordered to accompany the senior Japanese gentleman on a visitation trip to all of the training camps in the southern part of Japan and Kyushu. And there I first met Namikawa, who was on that tour because he was fluent in English and was an interpreter both to the Americans and to the other Japanese on their side. And that's when I first met Namikawa. And at that time, he was making a home for his mother, elderly mother, and his 3 sisters. They were young ladies, very shy, and they taught me things like how to use chopsticks. They'd put a bunch of hard-to-handle things in a bowl, like buttons and peas and things like that. And I was supposed to learn how to move them from one bowl to another with chopsticks. And I'm sure it caused a lot of merriment. And, well, I had to laugh too at my ineptitude. I began to tutor Namikawa in the ways of our government, the organization, which we knew we were going to try to establish that pattern in Japanese government. So I had to teach him that system of government, general staff, special staff, and things like that. And it took a lot of tutoring to do that. Now, I was a graduate of the Command and General Staff College in America, and I had with me a footlocker full of the tutoring pamphlets that were our government pamphlets, a whole footlocker full that we had used as texts while I was in the Commander General Staff College. And I turned that over to Namakawa, and he just ate it up. He was a good student. I'd like to show you a picture of an ancient Japanese gentleman. They revere old age. It became very evident that the Japanese had a very high regard for elderly people. I remember again the incident of meeting an elderly old crone with a beautiful, statuesque, lissom young lady. She was beautiful, helping this old crone walking. And our conversation, Namakawa's and mine, stopped as we drew close to them and passed them by. And when we got out of earshot, I made the comment, "Wasn't she beautiful? Wasn't she beautiful?" And he replied, "Yes, she certainly was beautiful." And the younger one must have been her granddaughter. Well, I had become well acquainted with Namakawa at this time, and we were comparing notes about times that we were in the same theater of operations but didn't know each other, and he started to tell me about how he had been given a letter of control over Japanese troops on the island of Biak, and told to build new airstrips. And I interrupted. I said, "Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that. We watched you building those airstrips." Later, we were able to talk about those earlier days in ways that were meaningful to each other. When I came home, as the peace treaty went into effect, I had arranged for Namakawa and several other Japanese to come to the U.S. as visitors and attend some of our schools, which they could learn things from. And Namakawa was to be my house guest. And he had some experiences that were interesting to him. First time he ever ate a hot dog. And we asked him at one point what he would like to do. And he got eager. He would like to visit Hollywood. I told him we couldn't do that. There wasn't time to do that in a weekend. Well, they had little understanding, he did, of the distances in California. Japan is a much smaller area to maneuver around in. When the peace treaty went into effect, what had been during occupation days, our advisory and control group was transferred to the embassy. And in diplomatic fashion, the list of members thereof was submitted to the Japanese diplomatic protocol manner, and the Japanese referred it to their senior military commander, Hayashi, and he looked the list over, and I don't know what other comments he might have made, but it was later reported that he made the comment that he would like to have seen Colonel Loken's name on that list. And it didn't take long for that to get back to Washington, and I got yanked out of Fort Ord and sent back to Japan. I've had a kind of an interesting life, originally as an enemy, and later as a warm-hearted associate of people of Japan.